Okay, this is page 324, 1 through 25 odd. We are solving equations by factoring. Okay, so this one's actually already factored for us, so we just need to set it up. X plus 3 is equal to 0, and 3x minus 4 is equal to 0. So you're going to subtract 3 from both sides, giving you x equals negative 3. Add 4. Then divide by 3. And you get x equals 4/3. So your solution set is negative 3 and 4/3. And then you just need to check them by plugging them back into the original. Okay, here, they actually already factored for us, so we're good. We just need to, if you think about it, you would just divide both sides by 3 to get rid of this 3. 0 divided by 3 is just 0. So then you have 2x minus 5 times 4x plus 3 is equal to 0. So now you're just going to set each one equal to 0. Okay, so you're going to add 5 to both sides. Then divide by 2. So you get 5 halves, and then over here you're going to subtract 3 from both sides. Then divide by 4. So your solution set is negative 3/4 and 5 halves. Always plug them back in to make sure that they're correct. Alright, now we're actually going to have to factor. So there is no GCF, so we're going to multiply our first and last terms, which gives us 1 times 20, which gives us 24. Factors of 24 are 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. Now you want to figure out the factors that are going to give you your middle term. So no, no, yes, no. Begin your construction. Don't forget your equals 0. Each house gets an x. Always keep your first sign. If your first sign is positive, you keep your second sign, and the larger number goes first. Look at each house, see if they have anything in common. They don't, so I can just go ahead and set each one equal to 0. So subtract 8 from both sides. You get x equals negative 8. Subtract 3 from both sides, you get x equals negative 3. So your solution set is negative 8, negative 3. Okay, there is nothing you can factor out of this. So again, when you multiply our first and last, you get 24. So 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. It looks like 3 and 8 are actually going to be our choice again. So when we build our houses this time, make sure both houses get a 12x at the beginning. Okay? Always keep your first sign. If your first sign is positive, you keep your second sign. Larger number goes first. Now look at each house and see if they have anything in common. This house has a 4 in common. This house has a 3 in common, so you divide it out. This leaves you 3x plus 2. This leaves you 4x minus 1. Now you always want to FOIL to check. Then you're going to set each one equal to 0. So you have 3x equals negative 2. Divide both sides by 3. You get x is 2/3. And then over here you're going to add 1 to both sides. You get 4x equals 1. Divide both sides by 4. So your solution set is negative 2/3 and 1/4. First things first, you have to make sure that one side is set equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 10z from both sides. On your right side it cancels, but on your left side you don't have anything in common. So you just write them in order, and then you factor. There is no GCF I can factor out, so I'm going to multiply my first and last terms, or first and last coefficients. This gives me 9, 1 times 9, and 3 times 3. So we're going to use 1 times 9 to get our middle term. If your first sign is minus, you change your second sign, and your larger number always goes first. So you have z minus 9 equals 0, and z minus 1 equals 0. So z equals 9, and z equals 1. So your solution set is 1 and 9. Alright, we need one side to be equal to 0, but first we're going to go ahead and distribute this x. So you end up with 5x squared plus 2x equals 3. Then we're going to subtract 3 from both sides to get the right side equal to 0. So that gives us 5x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. There is no GCF that I can factor out, so I'm going to multiply my first and last numbers. So it's 5 times 3 is 15. List your factors of 15 and see which ones can give you your middle term. 1 and 15 can't give you 2, but 3 and 5 can. So go ahead and build your houses. Remember, each house gets a 5x. We'll fix it in a minute. Always keep your first sign. If your first sign is plus, you keep your second sign. Larger number goes first. This house has a 5 in common, so I'm going to divide it out. So I have x plus 1 times 5x minus 3. Always FOIL to check. I do that part in my head. And then you set each house equal to 0. So subtract 1 from both sides, you get x equals negative 1. Okay, then you're over here, you're going to add 3 to both sides. You get 5x equals 3. Divide both sides by 5, so your solution set is negative 1 and 3/5. Okay, first thing you need to do is distribute on the right side. So you have x squared minus 6x equals 8x plus x squared. Then you're going to go ahead and subtract x squared from both sides, which leaves you negative 6x equals 8x. Add 6x to both sides, giving you 0 equals 14x. Divide both sides by 14, and you end up with x equals 0. Didn't even have to factor that one. Okay, now if you have a fraction, the first thing you want to do is multiply by the LCD. So remember, your LCD, always put everything over 1. So I need my least common denominator from 6, 2, 1, and 1. So that's going to be 6. So I'm going to multiply 6 by every piece. So these 6's cancel. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 6 divided by 1 is 6. And 6 divided by 1 is 6. So then you multiply. So you have z squared minus 3z minus 18 is equal to 0. Now you're going to have to factor. There's nothing you can factor out, so you end up multiplying your first and last numbers and then writing your factors. Which factors are going to give you 3, 6, and 3. So build your house. Z goes in the front of each. If your first sign is negative, you change your second sign, and your larger number always goes first. So then you set each house equal to 0. And you get z equals 6. And z equals negative 3. So your answer, solution set is negative. Okay, still need to do an LCD here. Between 2, 20, and 10, it's going to be 20. So multiply 20 by each piece. 20 divided by 2 is 10. 20 divided by 20 is 1. And 20 divided by 10 is 2. So you end up with 10x squared plus x equals 2. And then you're going to subtract 2 from both sides because you want your right side of the equation to be set equal to 0 so you can factor. So there's no GCF to factor out, so you're going to do 10 times 2 is 20. And then you're going to list your factors of 20. And the ones that could give you 1 are 4 and 5. So you're going to do 10x and 10x. Keep your first sign. If your first sign is positive, you keep your second sign. And then you have 5 and 4. Larger number always goes first. This house has a 5 in common. This house has a 2 in common. So you need to divide those out. This leaves you 2x plus 1 and 5x minus 2. 2x plus 1 equals 0. 5x minus 2 equals 0. Subtract 1 from both sides. You get 2x equals negative 1. Divide both sides by 2. You get x equals negative 1/2. So 5x equals 2, divide both sides by 5, you get negative 1/2 and 2/5 are your solutions. Okay, same thing here. My LCD is going to be 10 on this one. So 10 gets multiplied by each piece. 10 divided by 5 is 2, 10 divided by 5 is 2, and 10 divided by 10 is just 1. So now when you multiply, you do 2 times 4t squared, which is going to give you 8t squared, and then 2 times t is going to give you 2t, and then 1 times 3 is going to give you 3. So now I'm going to subtract 2t from both sides, giving me 8t squared minus 2t is equal to 3, and then I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, so my right side is equal to 0. Okay, see if there's a GCF you can factor out. There isn't, so you multiply your first and last term to get 24. Your factors of 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. And you want the one that can give you 2. So, not 1 and 24, not 2 and 12, not 3 and 8, but 4 and 6. Build your houses. Each house gets an 8t. Keep your first sign. If your first sign is negative, you change your second sign. And then you always write your larger number first. This house has a 2 in common. This house has a 4 in common. So over here you're left with 4t minus 3. And over here you're left with 2t plus 1. So now set them equal to 0 independently. Okay, so add 3. You get 4t is equal to 3. So t is 3/4. And then you get 2t is equal to negative 1. So your solution set is negative 1/2 and 3/4. Okay, here you just have 3 binomials, which is no big deal. You're just going to set each one equal to 0. And then you'll have 3 answers. Okay, so this is subtract 2 from both sides, you get x equals negative 2. Add 7 to both sides, you get x equals 7. Add 8 to both sides, you get 3x equals 8. Then divide by 3, you get x equals 8/3. So your solution set would be negative 2, 8/3, and 7. Okay, first things first, you need to subtract 9y from both sides, so you're equal to 0. So you have y cubed minus 9y equals 0. Then you can factor out a y, because they have a y in common, leaving you y times y squared minus 9. Y squared minus 9 is difference of squares. So that leaves you y plus 3, y minus 3. Because remember, it's a plus b times a minus b. And the way that you get a and b is you take the square roots of these. So on this one, a would be y and b would be 3. And then you set each one of these equal to 0. So you have, so you have, let's try that again. There we go. So you have y equals 0, y plus 3 equals 0, and y minus 3 equals 0. So here you're going to subtract 3 from both sides to get y equals negative 3. And here you're going to add 3 to both sides to get y equals 3. So your solution set is negative 3, 0, and 3. Alright. First thing I'm going to do here is subtract 2x squared from both sides, trying to get one of my sides to equal 0. So I have x cubed minus 2x squared minus x equals negative 2. Then I'm going to add 2 to both sides, which is going to give me x cubed minus 2x squared minus x plus 2 equals 0. There isn't anything I can factor out of all 4 terms, But 4 terms should be a dead giveaway that I'm going to factor by grouping. Because my third term is negative, I know I'm going to factor a negative out of my second binomial. So my first binomial has an x squared in common, leaving me x minus 2. My second binomial, I know I need to factor a negative out, but there isn't anything in common, so I'm just going to factor out a negative 1, leaving me x minus 2. So then remember, you group what's on the outside together, and then write what's on the inside. So it's x squared minus 1 times x minus 2 equals 0. And x squared minus 1 is actually difference of squares. So this will be your a, this will be your b, but you need to take the square root of it. So it's going to be x plus 1 times x minus 1 times x minus 2. Because remember, difference of squares is a plus b times a minus b. And in this case, a is x and b is 1. So that's where I got x plus 1 and x minus 1. Then you set each one equal to 0. Subtract 1 from both sides, you get x equals negative 1. Add 1 from both sides. Add 1 to both sides, you get x equals 1. Add 2 to both sides, you get x equals 2. So your solution set is negative 1, 1, and 2. That's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow.